In a small African village called Nduka, there lived a proud and beautiful young woman named Zara. Zara was the eldest daughter of a humble family. Her father, Baba Ola, was a farmer, and her mother, Mama Adunni, loved to host visitors and talk about the future of her daughters. Zara had 4 younger sisters, Amma, Bola, Esi, and Kemi. All of them were known for their beauty, but it was Zara who stood out. She was not only beautiful but smart and full of wisdom. One day, news spread through the village that a rich man, Chief Ade, had sent his nephew Kola to settle in Nduka. Kola was not only wealthy, but also a powerful hunter, admired by many. Every maiden in the village wished to meet him, and Mama Adunni was determined to have Zara marry him. She believed that this was Zara's chance to lift the family out of poverty. Mama Adunni spoke with Zara. "My daughter, you must marry Kola. He is a strong man with many cows, goats, and land. Your sisters will follow after you. Do not let this chance slip by." Zara listened but felt uneasy. She wasn't sure if Kola was the right man for her, for she valued kindness, honesty, and love over riches. At a village celebration, the people of Nduka gathered to welcome Kola. He arrived with his friend Lami, a wise and quiet man. Kola was tall and proud, with an air of arrogance that made Zara uncomfortable. But to her surprise, it was Lami who caught her attention. He was calm and mysterious, and something about him stirred a curiosity deep inside her. As the evening went on, Kola barely spoke to anyone. He was interested only in the wealth and the respect he commanded. When he finally approached Zara, it was not to speak kindly, but to boast about his riches. "I am the richest man in all the land. Many women wish to be my wife, but I have chosen you, Zara," Kola said proudly, looking down at her. Zara's heart sank. His words confirmed what she feared. Kola was proud and full of himself. She knew this was not the kind of man she could love. But Mama Adunni, hearing Kola's words, was delighted and quickly accepted on her daughter's behalf, thinking this was the perfect match. As days passed, Zara's heart grew heavy. She couldn't forget the quiet Lami, who had said little during the celebration, but whose eyes spoke of wisdom and depth. Zara's sisters, Amma and Bola, noticed the change in her and asked, "Sister, why do you seem sad? Mama says you are to marry the richest man in the village. Shouldn't you be happy?" But Zara shook her head. "Riches do not bring happiness. I do not know what my heart seeks, but it is not Kola's arrogance." While the preparations for Zara's marriage to Kola went on, something unexpected happened. Lami began visiting the village more often. He was not wealthy like Kola, but he was respected for his wisdom and his ability to listen to the concerns of others. One day, as Zara walked through the village, she found herself alone with Lami by the riverbank. They spoke for hours, and for the first time Zara felt understood. Lami's quiet strength and gentle heart drew her in, and she realized that love was beginning to grow in her heart for him. But there was a problem. Kola was determined to marry Zara, and no one in the village would dare challenge him. His pride would not allow anyone to stand in his way, and he believed that Zara was his by right. Even worse, he was beginning to notice Zara and Lami's growing friendship, and his jealousy was burning inside him like a fire. One evening, as the sun set over the village, Kola confronted Lami. "You think you can take what is mine?" he snarled. "Zara belongs to me. She is promised to me, and you are nothing compared to my wealth." Lami remained calm, but his heart pounded. "Zara belongs to no one," he said quietly. "Her heart is her own to give." Kola's eyes narrowed with fury. "You will regret those words." As the tension between Kola and Lami grew, the villagers began to talk. Some believed Zara should follow her heart and be with Lami, while others feared Kola's power and thought it was wiser for her to marry him. Even Mama Adunni was torn. She wanted the best for her daughter, but she also feared Kola's wrath if they disrespected him. One day, Zara overheard a conversation between Kola and his friend. Kola was planning something terrible. He wanted to use his influence to force Zara into marriage, no matter her feelings. Zara's heart raced with fear. She realized that she could no longer stand by and let others decide her fate. She had to choose for herself. That night, Zara met Lami by the old baobab tree, where they often spoke in secret. "We must leave this village," Zara whispered. "Kola will not stop until he has me, and I will not marry him." Lami hesitated, for he loved his village and did not want to run away like a coward. "Are you sure this is what you want, Zara?" he asked, looking deeply into her eyes. Zara nodded. "I am sure. My heart belongs to you, and I will not let pride or riches decide my future." But as they made their plans to escape, Kola's jealousy and pride grew stronger. He knew something was going on between Zara and Lami, and he was determined to stop it at any cost. Kola was not a man who took no for an answer, and he was ready to go to any lengths to claim what he believed was rightfully his. Tensions were rising in the village, and soon the time for decisions would come. Would Zara and Lami be able to escape together and follow their hearts? Or would Kola's power and pride tear them apart? The morning sun rose slowly over the village of Induka, casting long shadows across the ground. Zara and Lami had barely slept, their hearts filled with both hope and fear as they made plans to leave the village that very night. They knew it wouldn't be easy. Kola's eyes were everywhere, and his influence over the village was strong. But Zara's resolve only grew stronger. Her heart beat for Lami, and no amount of wealth or power would change that. As the day wore on, Mama Adani noticed Zara's anxious state. "Zara, you seem troubled," she said, watching her daughter carefully. "Kola is a rich and powerful man. Why do you hesitate? This is a good match." Zara looked at her mother, torn between love for her family and the need to follow her own path. "Mama, Kola's riches do not bring happiness. He is not kind, and his heart is filled with pride. I cannot marry a man like him." Mama adun fronad. "But what will people say? Our family is not rich. We do not have much. Kola can provide for you and your sisters. Is that not enough?" Zara shook her head, her voice trembling. "I will not marry a man I do not love, Mama. My heart belongs to Lami." At the mention of Lami's name, Mama Adani stiffened. She knew Lami was a good man, but he had no wealth, no land, no power. How could she let her daughter choose him over Kola? "That boy has nothing, Zara," Mama Adani said quietly. "How will he care for you? How will he protect you from Kola's anger?" But Zara was firm. "Lami's heart is kind and true. That is worth more than all the riches in the world. I will not marry Kola, Mama. I will not." As the day stretched into evening, word spread through the village. People whispered about Zara's defiance, and Kola's jealousy grew with every passing hour. He sent his men to watch Zara, knowing she might try to escape with Lami. The village was buzzing with tension, and it felt as though something terrible was about to happen. That night, Zara and Lami met by the river, under the cover of darkness. The stars twinkled above them, and the only sound was the gentle flow of the water. Lami looked at Zara, his heart full of both love and fear. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low. Zara nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I am. We must go now before Kola finds out." Just as they were about to leave, a rustling sound came from the trees. Zara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Out of the shadows stepped Alyamide, one of Kola's closest men. His face was cold, and his eyes glinted with malice. "Kola was right," Alyamide sneered. "You think you can run away? You think you can defy him? You're a fool, Zara." Lami stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Leave us alone, Alyamide. Zara has made her choice." But Alyamide laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet night. "Her choice means nothing. Kola will not be defied. He will have what he wants, and there is nothing you can do to stop him." Without warning, Alyamide lunged at Lami, knocking him to the ground. Zara screamed as the two men struggled in the dirt, their fists flying. Lami fought back with all his strength, but Alyamide was strong and ruthless, determined to bring Zara back to Kola. Just as it seemed Alyamide would overpower him, Lami grabbed a nearby branch and struck Alyamide across the head, knocking him out cold. Breathing heavily, Lami stood up, his face bruised but his spirit unbroken. "We have to go now," he said, taking Zara's hand. They ran through the forest, their hearts racing as they heard the distant shouts of Kola's men. The village of Induka grew smaller behind them, but Zara knew that Kola would not stop hunting them. His pride would not allow it. He would come after them, and he would stop at nothing to claim what he believed was his. As they reached the edge of the forest, Zara and Lami paused to catch their breath. Zara looked at Lami, her heart filled with both love and fear. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Lami's eyes were dark and thoughtful. "We will find a way," he said. "But we must keep moving. Kola will not rest until he finds us." And so, hand in hand, they set off into the unknown, their love stronger than the fear that chased them. But as the moon rose high in the sky, casting an eerie light over the land, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Kola's pride was a dangerous thing, and the storm that was coming would test their love like never before. The darkness ahead was full of uncertainty, but Zara and Lami would face it together, their hearts beating as one. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, Kola was watching, waiting, ready to strike when the time was right. The battle for love had only just begun, and no one could predict how it would end. Zara and Lami walked deeper into the forest, guided only by the dim light of the moon. The night air was cool, and the leaves rustled softly in the wind. They had no idea where they were headed, but they knew they couldn't stop. Kola's men would be after them soon, and they had to stay ahead. "We need to find shelter," Lami whispered, his eyes scanning the trees for any sign of a safe place. Zara nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew Lami was right, but the fear of being caught made her legs tremble. After walking for what felt like hours, they stumbled upon a small, hidden cave tucked away in the side of a hill. It was dark and cold, but it would have to do. "We can stay here for the night," Lami said quietly. "It's not much, but it's safe." Zara sighed with relief as they settled inside the cave. The walls were damp, and the air was thick with the smell of earth, but at least they were hidden from Kola's men. For a moment, it felt like they were safe. But as Zara lay down on the cold ground, her thoughts kept drifting back to Kola. She could almost feel his eyes watching her, his pride and anger burning like fire. She knew he wouldn't give up easily. He was the kind of man who didn't take rejection lightly, and his power stretched far beyond the village of Induka. Lami sat beside her, his face thoughtful and worried. "We can't stay in one place for long," he said softly. "Kola has too many men. They'll search every corner of this land to find us." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "What will we do? We can't keep running forever." Lami reached out and gently wiped away her tears. "We'll figure it out, Zara. I promise you I won't let him take you. Not ever." But even as he said the words, Zara could see the uncertainty in his eyes. They were both afraid. Kola's power was strong, and they were just two people alone in the wild. Still, she clung to Lami's hand, finding comfort in his presence. As they drifted into a restless sleep, the forest outside remained still, but danger lurked in the shadows. Far from the cave, Kola was meeting with his men. His face was hard, and his eyes blazed with fury. "They've escaped," he growled, pacing back and forth. "Zara thinks she can run from me. She thinks she can defy me." One of his men, Kunnel, stepped forward cautiously. "We'll find them, Chief. No one can hide from you. Kola siavtaitend. I want every path, every village, every forest searched. I want Zara back before the sun sets tomorrow. And as for that fool Lami, I'll deal with him myself." His men nodded, ready to obey his command. They knew better than to question Kola when he was angry. Kunnel, who had always been loyal to Kola, couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Zara was not like other women. She had a spirit, a strength that made her different. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was Kola's pride, and no one could stand in the way of that. By dawn, Kola's men were already spreading through the land, searching every village, every farm, and every hidden corner of the forest. The hunt was on, and Kola would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. Back at the cave, Zara and Lami awoke to the sound of birds singing softly in the trees. For a brief moment, the world seemed peaceful, but it wasn't long before the tension returned. Lami stood at the entrance of the cave, watching the forest with a worried expression. "We have to move," he said. "Kola's men will be out there, searching for us." Zara nodded, her heart heavy with fear and uncertainty. As they left the cave and continued deeper into the forest, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. They had escaped for now, but how long could they really stay hidden from a man as powerful as Kola? As they walked, Zara couldn't help but wonder what would happen if they were caught. Kola was not a man known for mercy. He would see Lami as a challenge to his authority, and Zara feared what Kola might do if he found them together. But even in the face of such danger, she knew she couldn't turn back. Her heart was set on Lami, and nothing, not even Kola's pride, could change that. As the hours passed and the sun climbed higher in the sky, Zara and Lami began to hear voices in the distance. Panic set in as they realized Kola's men were close. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the trees, and Zara's heart raced. "We have to hide," Lami whispered, pulling Zara behind a thick cluster of bushes. They crouched low, their breathing shallow, as the voices grew louder. Kola's men were searching the area, their eyes sharp and their voices filled with determination. Zara squeezed Lami's hand, praying that they wouldn't be found. The minutes felt like hours as they waited, every rustle of the leaves sending a wave of fear through Zara's body. Just as it seemed the men would pass without noticing them, Kunal, one of Kola's most trusted men, stopped. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the bushes. Zara held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. If they were caught now, there would be no escape. Kunal stepped closer, his hand resting on the hilt of his spear. He was only a few feet away from where Zara and Lami were hiding, and for a moment, it seemed like all hope was lost. But then, another man called out from the distance, drawing Kunal's attention away. "We've found something," the man shouted. Kunal hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked away, leaving Zara and Lami hidden in the bushes. Relief washed over them, but they knew they couldn't stay there for long. Kola's men were closing in, and it was only a matter of time before they were found. As they emerged from their hiding spot, Lami looked at Zara with determination in his eyes. "We can't keep running like this," he said quietly. "We need a plan." Zara nodded, her mind racing. They couldn't keep running forever, but what choice did they have? Kola's pride would never allow him to stop, and his men would search every inch of the land until they were found. But as the sun began to set once more, an idea began to form in Zara's mind. There was only one way to end this, one way to truly escape Kola's wrath. It was risky, and it might not work, but it was their only hope. She turned to Lami, her heart pounding with both fear and determination. "I know what we have to do," she said, her voice steady. "But it will take all the courage we have." Lami looked at her, his eyes filled with trust and love. "Whatever it is, Zara, we'll face it together." And so, as darkness fell over the land once again, Zara and Lami prepared for the greatest challenge they had ever faced. They would have to confront Kola, face his pride and his power head-on. It was the only way to end this chase, the only way to truly be free. The path ahead was dangerous, but Zara's heart was filled with strength. She was no longer afraid. She would fight for her love, no matter the cost. The battle for their future was just beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. As they set off toward Kola's stronghold, hand in hand, Zara whispered a silent prayer to the spirits of the land. She didn't know what would happen, but she knew one thing for sure. She would not let Kola control her fate. Not now. Not ever. The night was dark, and the forest was quiet, but the storm was coming. Zara and Lami moved swiftly through the dark forest, their feet barely making a sound as they followed the narrow path toward Kola's stronghold. The air was thick with tension, and every rustle of the leaves made Zara's heart race. She knew that confronting Kola was a dangerous plan, but there was no other choice. Running would only delay the inevitable. As they approached the edge of the forest, they could see the outline of Kola's compound in the distance. It was large, surrounded by high walls and guarded by his men. Fires burned brightly in the courtyards, and the sound of drums echoed through the air. It seemed as though the entire village had gathered for a celebration. Lami stopped and grabbed Zara's hand. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Zara looked at the compound and then back at Lami. "We have to face him, Lami. We can't keep running. If we do, he'll never stop hunting us." Lami nodded, though his eyes were filled with concern. "Whatever happens, we face it together." They waited until the night grew even darker before making their way toward the compound. Zara's heart was pounding, but she kept her head high. This was not just about escaping Kola's grasp. It was about reclaiming her life, her freedom. She wouldn't let Kola, or anyone else, dictate her fate. As they reached the gates of the compound, Lami glanced around, making sure none of Kola's guards had spotted them. He whispered, "We need to get inside without being seen. If we confront Kola in front of everyone, it could turn violent." Zara agreed. They slipped through the shadows, moving quietly along the outer walls until they found a small side entrance that led into the courtyard. They could hear the sound of people talking and laughing, the clatter of food being served, and the rhythmic beat of drums filling the night air. As they entered the courtyard, Zara saw Kola sitting in the center of the celebration, surrounded by his men. His face was lit by the fire, and he wore a smug expression as if he had already won. Zara's stomach churned at the sight of him, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was the moment she had been dreading, but it was also her chance to put an end to the chase. Lami leaned close to her. "We need to wait for the right moment." But that moment came sooner than they expected. As Kola glanced around the courtyard, his eyes locked onto Zara's. For a brief second, shock flashed across his face, but it was quickly replaced by anger. He stood abruptly, silencing the crowd with his sudden movement. "So, you've finally shown your face, Zara," Kola said, his voice loud and filled with arrogance. "I knew you couldn't hide from me forever." The crowd turned to look at Zara and Lami, and whispers filled the air. Zara felt the weight of all those eyes on her, but she didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "I did not come here to hide, Kola. I came to tell you that I will not marry you." The crowd gasped, and Kola's face twisted with fury. "You think you can defy me, Zara? I have chosen you, and you will be mine. I've given your family more than they could ever dream of. You owe me your obedience." Zara took another step forward, her hands trembling but her spirit unbroken. "I owe you nothing, Kola. You cannot buy my heart with riches or power. I will not marry a man whose heart is filled with pride and cruelty. My heart belongs to Lami." The crowd erupted in shock, and Kola's eyes burned with rage. "Lami," he spat. "That poor fool. He is nothing compared to me." Lami stepped forward, standing tall beside Zara. "Zara is not a prize to be won, Kola. She is a person with her own choices, her own will. You cannot force her into a life she doesn't want." Kola's hand tightened into a fist, and for a moment, Zara feared he would attack Lami right then and there. But Kola held himself back, though his voice dripped with venom. "You dare speak to me like this? In front of my people? You think you can humiliate me and walk away?" Zara took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Kola's. "It is you who are humiliating yourself, Kola. You think your wealth and power make you strong, but they only make you weak. A true leader is one who listens to the people, who leads with kindness and respect. You will never have my heart, because you do not know how to love." For a long moment, there was silence. The crowd watched in stunned disbelief as Zara stood her ground against the most powerful man in the village. Kola's face was red with anger, and his chest heaved with every breath. But then something unexpected happened. Kunnal, Kola's most trusted man, stepped forward. He had always been loyal to Kola, but even he could see the truth in Zara's words. "Kola," Kunnal said, his voice calm but firm, "Zara is right. You cannot force someone to love you. Respect her decision." Kola turned to Kunnal, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You side with them?" he snarled. Kunnal looked at Zara and Lami, then back at Kola. "I side with what is right." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Kola's face paled as he realized he was losing control. His pride had blinded him to the truth, and now even his closest allies were turning against him. With one last furious glance at Zara, Kola turned and stormed out of the courtyard, disappearing into the night. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving Zara and Lami standing together in the quiet aftermath of the confrontation. Lami turned to Zara, his eyes filled with both relief and admiration. "You were brave, Zara. You stood up to him, and now it's over." But Zara shook her head, her heart still heavy with unease. "It's not over, Lami. Kola's pride is too strong. He won't give up that easily." Lami frowned, but he knew she was right. Kola was not the kind of man who would let such a defeat go unpunished. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. As they left the compound and returned to the safety of the forest, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that Kola was still watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The storm was still coming, and they would need all their strength to face it. As Zara and Lami made their way through the dark forest, the weight of what had just happened hung heavily over them. Zara's heart raced, not just from fear, but from the realization that they had challenged one of the most powerful men in the land. While they had stood their ground, she knew Kola's pride was not so easily broken. He would return, and next time, he might not be as easily defeated. They found refuge in a small clearing, hidden deep in the forest. The tall trees provided shelter from the wind, and a narrow stream ran quietly through the clearing. It felt peaceful, but Zara's mind was still clouded with thoughts of Kola and what might happen next. "We need to think about what's coming," Lami said softly, sitting beside her on a large rock near the stream. "Kola won't let this go." Zara nodded, her eyes staring into the rippling water. "I know. His pride is too big to accept defeat." Lami placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "But we can't let fear control us. We have each other, and that's stronger than anything Kola can throw at us." Zara turned to look at Lami, her heart swelling with emotion. His presence gave her strength, but even she couldn't ignore the danger they were in. The village might have seen the truth, but Kola was a man who didn't care about the opinions of others. His power came from his riches and influence, and he would use both to get what he wanted. Suddenly, the quiet of the forest was broken by the sound of distant footsteps. Zara's heart leaped in her chest. They were not alone. "Someone's coming," she whispered urgently, grabbing Lami's arm. They quickly moved into the shadows, hiding behind a cluster of trees. The footsteps grew louder, and soon, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was Amma, Zara's younger sister, her face pale and full of worry. "Amma." Zara stepped out of hiding, relief flooding through her. "What are you doing here?" Amma rushed forward, her breath coming in short gasps. "Zara, Mama sent me. Something terrible is happening." Zara's stomach twisted with fear. "What is it? Is it Kola?" Amma nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "Kola is furious. He's telling the entire village that you've betrayed him, that you're trying to destroy his honor. He's gathering men from neighboring villages to hunt you down, and he's promised a great reward to anyone who brings you back." Zara's heart sank. This was exactly what she had feared. Kola's pride had been wounded, and now he was using his wealth and power to turn the villagers against her. "We have to leave," Lami said quickly, his voice firm. "If Kola's men are coming, we can't stay here." "Ama shook hadhid." "It's not just the men, Zara. Mama is worried that Kola will take out his anger on our family. He's already threatened Baba. If you don't come back, he says he'll destroy our home." Zara's blood ran cold. Her family was in danger because of her. She had stood up to Kola, but now the people she loved the most were paying the price. "I have to go back," Zara said, her voice trembling with resolve. Lami grabbed her arm, his eyes filled with concern. "No, Zara. If you go back, Kola will force you to marry him. You'll lose your freedom." Zara shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I can't let my family suffer because of me, Lami. If Kola destroys their lives, I'll never forgive myself." Lami's grip on her arm tightened, his face torn with emotion. "There has to be another way. We can't just give in to him." Amma stepped forward, her voice quiet but urgent. "Zara, there's one more thing you should know. Before I left, I overheard Mama speaking with one of the elders. There's an old woman, Ebony, who lives in the mountains beyond the village. She's said to have powers, wisdom that can help people in desperate times. Mama thinks she might know a way to stop Kola." Zara frowned. She had heard stories of Ebony, the mysterious old woman who lived in the mountains. Some said she was a healer, while others believed she had magical abilities. But no one truly knew for sure. "Ebony?" Lami asked, his brow furrowed. "Do you really think she can help us?" Amma shrugged, her face full of uncertainty. "I don't know, but it's the only hope Mama has. She says if anyone can help you stop Kola, it's Ebony." Zara's mind raced. This was their only chance. She couldn't let Kola ruin her family's life, but she also couldn't let herself be trapped in a marriage with him. If Ebony truly had the wisdom to help, then they had to find her. "We'll go to the mountains," Zara said, her voice steady with determination. "We'll find Ebony and see if she can help us." Lami looked at Zara, his eyes full of concern but also trust. If that's what you want, then we'll go together. But we have to move quickly. Kola's men will be hunting us soon. Amma hugged her sister tightly before pulling away. Be careful, Zara. I'll go back to the village and try to protect Mama and Baba until you return. Zara nodded, her heart heavy with both fear and hope. She knew the journey to the mountains would be dangerous, but she had no choice. It was the only way to save her family and her future. As they set off toward the distant mountains, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on them. The path ahead was unknown, and the danger from Kola's men was growing with every passing moment. But Zara's heart was filled with determination. She would not let Kola's pride destroy her life or the lives of those she loved. The journey to Abony's mountain had begun, and with it came the hope of finding the wisdom that could defeat Kola's power once and for all. But as the darkness deepened around them, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. The journey to the mountains was long and treacherous. Zara and Lami made their way through dense forests, crossing rivers and climbing steep hills. The air grew colder the higher they went, and the path became more difficult to navigate. But Zara's determination never wavered. She was driven by the thought of her family, the people she loved, and the hope that Abony could offer a way to stop Kola once and for all. Lami, though quiet, remained by her side, offering his strength when the path grew tough. Are you sure Abony will help us? Lami asked as they rested beneath a large tree, the mountain towering above them. Zara's brow furrowed. I don't know, Lami, but we have to try. We can't go back to the village without finding a way to stop Kola. Lami nodded, though the uncertainty weighed heavily on both of them. Time was not on their side. Kola's men would be searching for them, and every second they delayed brought them closer to being captured. As they continued their journey, the landscape began to change. The trees thinned out, replaced by rocky terrain. The air was crisp and thin, and a sense of eeriness filled the atmosphere. It was as though they were entering a different world, one where the rules of the village no longer applied. Suddenly, as they rounded a steep bend in the path, Zara saw a figure standing in the distance. It was an old woman, hunched over and leaning on a twisted wooden staff. Her hair was long and silver, and her skin was weathered from years of living in the mountains. Zara's heart skipped a beat. Could this be Abony? The woman's piercing eyes locked onto Zara and Lami as they approached. I know why you've come, she said in a raspy voice, without waiting for them to speak. You seek help against the one called Kola. Zara and Lami exchanged a glance, surprised by the woman's words. Zara stepped forward cautiously. Yes, we need your wisdom. Kola is a powerful man, and he's trying to force me into marriage. I need to stop him, but I don't know how. Abony's eyes narrowed as she studied Zara carefully. Kola's power comes not from his wealth or his men. It comes from his pride. And pride is a dangerous thing, for it blinds men to the truth. It makes them believe they are invincible, even when they are not. Zara listened intently, her heart racing. How do I defeat him? The old woman turned and motioned for them to follow her. Come with me. There are things you must understand before you can confront Kola. They followed Abony to a small, hidden cave nestled in the mountainside. Inside, the walls were adorned with strange markings, and the air was filled with the smell of herbs and smoke. A small fire crackled in the center, casting shadows on the walls. Abony sat down beside the fire and gestured for Zara and Lami to do the same. The path you are on is not an easy one, she began. But there is a way to break Kola's hold over you. It is not through strength or wealth, but through truth. Zara frowned, confused. What do you mean? Abony looked into the fire, her voice soft but firm. Kola's power is built on lies, lies that he tells himself and others. He believes that wealth gives him the right to take what he wants, and that his pride makes him strong. But in reality, his pride is his greatest weakness. If you can expose the truth, you will shatter the illusion of his power. Lami, who had been silent, spoke up. But how do we do that? Kola has the entire village under his control. They fear him. Abony's eyes gleamed with wisdom. The truth has a way of revealing itself, but it must be seen by all. There is something Kola has hidden, something he fears more than anything else. You must find it, and when you do, his power will crumble. Zara's heart raced with anticipation. What is it? Ebony's gaze turned sharp. That I cannot tell you. The truth must be uncovered by those who seek it. But I will give you this, a warning. Kola is not the only one you must be wary of. There are others who benefit from his lies, and they will try to stop you from uncovering the truth. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. What should we do? Ebony stood, her figure tall and commanding despite her age. Return to the village. Seek out those who know Kola's past, those who have seen the cracks in his pride. They will lead you to the truth. Zara and Lami stood as well, the weight of Ebony's words settling heavily on them. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was the only way forward. They couldn't let fear stop them now. Thank you, Zara said, her voice filled with gratitude. Ebony nodded. Be careful, child. Pride is a dangerous thing. It will not let go easily. With that, Zara and Lami left the cave, their hearts filled with both hope and fear. The mountains loomed behind them as they descended back toward the village, the journey ahead filled with uncertainty. But Zara knew one thing for sure. She would not stop until Kola's lies were exposed, and her family was safe. As they neared the edge of the forest, a sense of foreboding settled over them. The village lay just beyond the trees, but so did the danger that awaited them. Zara's mind raced with thoughts of what Ebony had said. What secret was Kola hiding? And who else would try to stop them from discovering the truth? The answers were waiting for them in the village, and Zara knew they would have to face whatever came next with courage and strength. The battle was far from over, and the storm was still gathering. As they stepped out of the forest and back into the world they had left behind, Zara couldn't help but feel that something had already shifted. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and when it came to light, nothing would ever be the same. Zara and Lami approached the village, just as the first light of dawn began to creep across the horizon. The familiar sounds of Nduka, the distant voices of villagers and the occasional bark of dogs, seemed quieter than usual. There was a tension in the air, a feeling of something unresolved lurking beneath the surface. Zara's heart was pounding. She wasn't sure what awaited them, but she knew they had no choice but to face it. As they neared the entrance of the village, they noticed a group of people gathered near the central market. Whispers floated on the wind, and Zara could hear her name being spoken, mixed with fear and curiosity. We need to be careful, Lami whispered, his hand lightly touching her arm. Kola's men could be anywhere watching. Zara nodded. She had never felt so exposed, but she couldn't turn back now. Ebony's words echoed in her mind. The truth must be uncovered by those who seek it. What was Kola hiding, and how could they expose it? As they entered the village, the crowd's murmurs grew louder. Eyes followed them, filled with uncertainty and suspicion. It was clear that Kola's influence still held a firm grip on the people. Zara felt the weight of their judgment, but tried to remain focused on the task ahead. She had to find someone who knew Kola's past, someone who could help uncover the truth. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through the crowd. Zara! Zara turned to see her sister, Amma, running toward her. Relief washed over her as she saw the worried but familiar face of her younger sister. Amma reached them quickly, her eyes wide with concern. Zara, you need to be careful, Amma said, her voice trembling. Kola has been spreading lies about you. He says you've betrayed the village, that you're trying to ruin him. People are scared. Zara's heart sank. Kola's pride was poisoning the village, twisting the truth to suit his own desires. Amma, we need your help, Zara said urgently. There's something Kola is hiding, something that will reveal his true nature. We just don't know what it is yet. Amma sprofuro. I don't know if anyone in the village will speak out against him. They fear his power. But, she hesitated, her eyes darting nervously around them. There is someone, Baba Ogund, the oldest man in the village. He's lived here longer than anyone, and I've heard him talk about Kola's past before. He might know something. Zara felt a spark of hope. Where can we find him? He stays in his hut on the outskirts of the village near the river, Amma replied. But be careful. Kola's men are everywhere. If they see you talking to Baba Ogund, they'll report back to him. Zara nodded. Thank you, Amma. We'll be careful. Amma glanced around nervously. I have to go. Mama and Baba are safe for now, but I need to make sure Kola doesn't retaliate. Zara squeezed her sister's hand, her heart heavy with gratitude and fear. "Take care, Amma." With that, Amma slipped back into the crowd, disappearing among the villagers. Zara turned to Lami, who was already scanning the area for any sign of Kola's men. "We need to find Baba Ogund before Kola realizes we're back," Lami said, his voice tense. Zara agreed, and together they made their way toward the river, staying close to the shadows to avoid being seen. The village felt different now, darker, more hostile. Kola's influence hung over Nduka like a cloud, and Zara could feel the eyes of the people on her, filled with doubt and fear. As they reached the outskirts of the village, they spotted Baba Ogund's small, humble hut by the riverbank. The old man was sitting outside, his back hunched and his eyes distant, watching the flowing water with a quiet serenity. His long gray beard moved gently in the breeze, and he seemed unaware of their approach. Zara stepped forward cautiously. "Baba Ogunde." The old man slowly turned his head, his eyes narrowing as he looked at them. He said nothing for a long moment, studying them with the careful gaze of someone who had seen much in his life. "You are the one they speak of," Baba Ogund said quietly. "The one who has defied Kola." Zara nodded, her voice steady. "I have, but I need your help. There is something Kola is hiding, something that gives him his power over the village. We need to know the truth." Baba Ogund's expression grew darker, and he glanced around cautiously, as if afraid of who might be listening. "Kola is a man of pride," he said softly, "but his pride comes from something he fears." Zara's heart raced. What does he fear? The old man sighed deeply, as though the weight of what he was about to say had been carried for many years. Many years ago, before Kola became the powerful man you know today, he was just like any other young man in the village. But there was a terrible event, one that shaped him into the man he is now. His father, Chief Ajayi, was once the most powerful man in the village. He ruled with an iron fist, and Kola was his only son. Baba Ogund paused, his eyes distant as if remembering the past. One day there was a great famine. The crops failed, and the people were starving. Chief Ajayi refused to share his wealth or his food with the villagers, believing they were weak and unworthy. But Kola, despite his father's cruelty, wanted to help. He secretly gave food to the villagers, risking his father's wrath. When Chief Ajayi found out, he was furious. Zara listened intently, her mind racing with the implications of Baba Ogund's story. Kola's father beat him, humiliated him in front of the entire village, Baba Ogund continued. It was a shame that Kola never recovered from. When Chief Ajayi died, Kola swore he would never be humiliated like that again. He built his power on pride and fear, using his wealth to control the village and erase the memory of his father's cruelty. But deep down, Kola fears that the village will learn the truth, that he was once weak, that he once defied his own father. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. So Kola's power is built on a lie. He's hiding his own shame. Baba Ogund nodded. Yes, if the village knew that Kola once defied his father, that he was once punished for trying to help the people, it would shatter the image of strength he has created. His pride is his greatest weapon, but it is also his greatest weakness. Lami leaned in, his voice urgent. How do we expose the truth? Baba Ogund's eyes gleamed with a knowing look. The people must see it for themselves. They must hear the truth from someone who was there. Find someone who witnessed what happened between Kola and his father. Only then will the villagers believe. Zara's heart raced with hope. This was the key. Kola's power could be broken if the truth was revealed. But they would need to be careful. Kola would do anything to keep his past hidden, and his men were everywhere. As they stood to leave, Baba Ogund spoke one final warning. Be cautious, child. Kola's pride is fragile, and a man whose pride is threatened will do anything to protect it. You are walking a dangerous path. Zara nodded, her heart filled with both fear and determination. Thank you, Baba Ogund. With the truth in their hands, Zara and Lami left the old man's hut, their minds racing with what they had learned. They had to find someone who had witnessed Kola's past, someone who could help them expose the lie that had given him his power. But time was running out. Kola's men were already searching for them, and the closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous the path became. As they made their way back toward the village, Zara knew that the final confrontation with Kola was drawing near. The truth was their only weapon, but it was a weapon that could change everything. And somewhere in the shadows, Kola was waiting, ready to strike at the first sign of weakness. As Zara and Lami made their way back toward the heart of the village, the weight of Baba Ogun's revelation pressed heavily on them. The truth of Kola's past had shaken them, but it also gave them hope. If they could expose the shame Kola had buried for so long, his grip on the village would weaken. But the question remained, who in the village had witnessed the moment that had turned Kola into the man he was today? They moved carefully through the narrow streets, avoiding the main paths to keep out of sight. The sun was beginning to rise higher in the sky, and the village was slowly coming to life. Zara felt a sense of urgency building inside her. Kola would know they were back soon, if he didn't already. They didn't have much time. We need to find someone who was there, someone old enough to remember what happened between Kola and his father, Lami said quietly, scanning the village for any sign of Kola's men. Zara thought carefully. The event had happened many years ago, and there were only a few people in the village who would have been old enough to witness it. Then it struck her, Mama Folake, one of the village's oldest women. She had lived through many seasons and was known for her sharp memory of past events. Mama Folake, Zara whispered. She might know what happened. Lami nodded in agreement. If she knows, we need to find her before Kola's men do. They made their way toward Mama Folek's hut, a small, weathered structure near the outskirts of the village. As they approached, Zara felt a sense of relief when she saw the old woman sitting outside, weaving a basket. Her wrinkled face was calm, but her eyes were sharp, taking in everything around her. Mama Folake, Zara called softly as they neared. The old woman looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly as she recognized Zara and Lami. What brings you here, child? Mama Folake asked in a quiet but firm voice. It's not safe for you in the village. Kola's men are looking for you. Zara knelt beside her, her voice urgent but respectful. Mama, I know about what happened between Kola and his father. I know he's hiding the truth about his past. We need your help to expose it. Mama Folek's face darkened, and she sighed deeply, setting aside the basket she had been weaving. That was a long time ago, Zara. Most people have forgotten, or maybe they choose to forget. But we can't let Kola keep controlling the village with lies, Zara insisted. He's using his power to force me into marriage, and now he's threatening my family. Please, Mama, if you know anything, you have to tell us. Mama Folake was silent for a long moment, her eyes distant as if she was remembering something painful. Then she spoke, her voice low and full of sorrow. I was there the day Kola's father, Chief Ajayi, humiliated him. It was a terrible day for the village. The crops had failed, and the people were starving. Kola wanted to help, but his father refused. He was a hard man, full of pride and greed. When Kola tried to defy him by giving food to the people, Chief Ajayi beat him in front of everyone. He called him weak, unworthy to be his son. Zara's heart clenched as she listened. The story confirmed everything Baba Ogund had said. Kola never forgave his father for that, Mama Folake continued, her voice heavy with the weight of the past. When Chief Ajayi died, Kola made it his mission to erase that memory from the village. He used his wealth and power to build an image of strength, but that image is a lie. Deep down, Kola is still that boy who was humiliated in front of his people. Zara leaned closer, her voice soft but full of resolve. If the village knew the truth, they would see Kola for who he really is. They wouldn't fear him anymore. Mama Folek's eyes met Zara's, and for a moment, the old woman seemed torn. But then she nodded slowly. You're right, child. The village deserves to know the truth. But it won't be easy. Kola will do everything he can to stop you. He has many men who are loyal to him, and they will protect his secret at any cost. We're ready for whatever comes, Lami said, his voice steady. But we need your help to make the village listen. Mama Folek's expression softened. I will help you, Zara. The truth must come out, but we must be careful. Kola has ears everywhere, and he will not take this lightly. As they stood to leave, Mama Folake gave Zara one final piece of advice. Gather the villagers, but do it quietly. Once the truth is spoken, there will be no turning back. Kola's pride will make him dangerous, more dangerous than you've ever seen. Zara nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The time had come to act. She and Lami would gather the villagers and reveal Kola's secret, but they had to do it before Kola's men caught wind of their plan. As they left Mama Folek's hut and made their way back toward the center of the village, Zara could feel the tension building. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment that would decide everything. But the stakes were higher than ever, and Zara knew that once the truth was revealed, Kola's pride would drive him to desperate measures. As they quietly moved through the village, spreading the word to those they trusted, Zara could feel the storm approaching. The villagers were beginning to gather in the central square, their faces filled with curiosity and uncertainty. They knew something was happening, but they didn't yet understand the gravity of it. Zara stood beside Lami, her heart racing as more and more people joined them. The air was thick with tension, and she knew that at any moment, Kola's men could appear. But she couldn't turn back now. Finally, when the square was nearly full, Zara stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "I have something to say," she began, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. "Something that will change everything you think you know about Kola." The crowd murmured in confusion, and Zara took a deep breath before continuing. "Kola's power is built on a lie. He is not the strong, proud leader he pretends to be. There is something he has been hiding from all of you, something about his past." Just as the words left her mouth, the sound of footsteps echoed through the square. Zara's heart stopped as she saw Kola approaching, flanked by his men. His eyes were dark and full of fury, and his expression was one of pure rage. "What do you think you're doing, Zara?" Kola's voice was low and dangerous as he stepped forward, his men surrounding the square. "You dare speak against me in front of the village?" Zara's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground. This was the moment that would decide everything. The truth was out there now, and there was no turning back. Kola's eyes locked onto Zara's, filled with cold fury. "You think you can challenge me? You think you can win?" But Zara didn't flinch. "It's not about winning, Kola. It's about the truth." The storm had arrived, and the final battle was about to begin. Kola's eyes burned with fury as the crowd in the village square fell into an uneasy silence. His presence, as always, commanded attention. The tension in the air was palpable, and Zara could feel the weight of every villager's gaze on her. They were waiting for what would happen next, waiting to see if she would stand strong or fold under Kola's powerful glare. Zara took a deep breath and stepped forward. "The village deserves to know the truth, Kola. Your power is built on fear and lies, but it doesn't have to be this way." Kola's expression darkened, and he took a step toward her, his voice low and dangerous. "What do you think you know, Zara? You think you can stand here and destroy everything I've built with a few words?" Zara's heart pounded, but she refused to back down. She glanced around at the gathered villagers, seeing both fear and curiosity in their faces. She knew she had to reach them before Kola's men silenced her. "Kola's pride is his weakness," Zara continued, her voice clear and strong. "Many years ago, when the village was suffering, Kola tried to help the people. But his father, Chief Ajayi, punished him for it, humiliated him in front of all of you. Kola has spent his life hiding that shame, building his power on a lie that he is strong and untouchable. But the truth is, he fears that moment more than anything." The villagers murmured among themselves, the weight of Zara's words sinking in. They had long respected Kola for his wealth and influence, but hearing that his strength was a facade, built on fear and humiliation, made them question everything they had believed. Kola's face twisted with rage. "Lies!" he shouted, his voice booming through the square. "You're spreading lies to turn the village against me. This is treason, Zara." Zara held her ground. "It's not treason, Kola. It's the truth. You've spent your life controlling people through fear, but you've never been the man you pretend to be." Kola's men began to close in around Zara and Lami, their spears drawn, their eyes cold. But before they could move, a voice broke through the tension. "She speaks the truth." The crowd turned to see Mama Folek stepping forward, her old frame bent with age, but her voice steady and full of authority. "I was there the day Kola's father shamed him in front of the village. I saw how Kola tried to defy his father to help the people, and how Chief Ajayi punished him for it. Kola has spent his life hiding from that truth, but it's time the village knew. A hush fell over the square. The villagers, who had once feared and respected Kola, now looked at him with a new understanding. Whispers rippled through the crowd, and Zara could see the shift in their expressions. They no longer saw Kola as the invincible leader he had pretended to be. They saw him for what he truly was, a man driven by pride and fear. Kola's face was pale with rage, his fists clenched at his sides. He knew the truth had been revealed, and there was nothing he could do to take it back. The control he had over the village was slipping through his fingers, and he could feel it. "You'll pay for this, Zara," Kola snarled, his voice trembling with anger. "You and that fool, Lami. You think you've won, but this is far from over." Lami stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "It's over, Kola. The village knows the truth now. You can't control them with lies anymore." Kola's eyes flashed with fury, and for a moment, it looked like he might attack. His pride had been wounded in the worst way possible, and his anger was boiling over. But just as he took a step forward, the villagers began to move. One by one, they stepped away from Kola, backing away from his men, their faces no longer filled with fear, but with defiance. Kola's power had been broken, not by force, but by the truth. The village had turned against him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Go home, Kola," Mama Folktales said, her voice strong. "You've lost." Kola stood frozen for a moment, his eyes scanning the crowd, seeing the betrayal in the eyes of the people he had once controlled. His men looked uncertain, unsure of what to do now that their leader had been exposed. Finally, Kola turned on his heel, his face twisted with bitterness and defeat. He walked away, his men following him in silence. The village watched as he disappeared down the path, his once commanding presence reduced to nothing more than a shadow of the man he had pretended to be. Zara stood in the center of the square, her heart racing with a mixture of relief and disbelief. It was over. The village had seen Kola for who he truly was, and his reign of fear had come to an end. Lami stepped beside her, his hand finding hers. "You did it, Zara," he said softly, his voice filled with admiration. "You faced him, and you won." Zara nodded, though her mind was still swirling with everything that had just happened. "We won, Lami. The truth won." The villagers began to gather around them, their faces full of gratitude and respect. "Thank you, Zara," one of them said. "You've freed us from his control." Mama Folktales smiled, her eyes twinkling with pride. "The village owes you a great debt, child. You've given us our freedom." But even as the villagers celebrated, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't truly over. Kola's pride had been shattered, but a man like Kola wouldn't simply disappear into the shadows. His thirst for revenge would linger, and Zara knew that this victory, though sweet, was only the beginning. As the sun began to set over the village, casting long shadows across the square, Zara looked out toward the horizon, her heart filled with both hope and unease. Kola had been defeated, but she knew deep down that this was not the last she would see of him. The battle for her future, and the future of the village, was far from over. And somewhere, out in the darkness, Kola was already planning his next move. The storm had passed, but another one was surely on the horizon. Enjoyed the video? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest content. Share with your friends and join the conversation below.